When I woke up to find the closet door cracked open just wide enough for me to see the sliver of black beyond it, I assumed it was the draft again. The building was old, built sometime in the late 60s, and the windows didn't seal properly. Sometimes the closet door would creak open in the night like it was breathing. But that night, it wasn't just open. It was angled, like someone had pulled it from the inside and then stopped just short of revealing themselves. I didn't move at first. I lay there in bed, the sheets bunched at my waist, my eyes locked on that small opening. The room was still, except for the low hum of the radiator and the soft tap of a pipe ticking somewhere inside the wall. I held my breath, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No movement. No breathing that I could hear, at least not from that direction. After a few minutes, I worked up the nerve to get up. I told myself it was nothing, maybe I hadn't shut it fully. Maybe it bounced from the vibration of the city bus that passed by on the hour. But when I stepped across the floor and pulled the door open, there was no explanation waiting for me. Just my coats. My shoes. The same pair of jeans I'd tossed on the top shelf and forgotten about last week. Still, I stood there longer than I needed to, scanning the closet like it might scan me back. It smelled musty, like old fabric and dust. Familiar. But something felt off. Like the air had been disturbed. Like someone had breathed here too long and left part of themselves behind. That was the first night. I didn't mention it to my roommate. She was rarely around anyway. Jenna was a senior, busy, always at her boyfriend's place or in the library. We'd barely spoken in the 2 months since I'd moved in, which at the time I thought was a good thing. I liked the quiet. I liked the independence. The illusion of solitude. But I started noticing things after that. Subtle things. Like the sound of plastic crinkling softly in the dark as if someone had stepped on a grocery bag. The first time I heard it, I thought it was Jenna coming in late. But when I called out, no one answered. I got up, walked into the hall, checked her side of the room, nothing. No sign she'd ever come back that night. And then there was the smell. It wasn't strong. Just a faint, unfamiliar scent. Like old skin. Like someone who hadn't bathed in days. It would come and go, lingering in the corners, especially near the closet. I even asked Jenna once, trying to sound casual. Hey, did you leave food in here or something? She looked up from her laptop, annoyed. What? I just thought I smelled something. She sniffed the air and shrugged. It's an old dorm. Probably the vents. She wasn't wrong. The building had its quirks. The floors creaked, the pipes knocked, sometimes the lights flickered without reason. But the thing about that smell, it didn't feel like a mechanical glitch. It felt alive. By the 3rd week, I started waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night. Not because of a sound. Not because of a nightmare. I just woke up. Every single time I was facing the closet. The door would be closed, not open like that first night, but perfectly shut, perfectly aligned, perfectly still. And yet I'd lie there, heart-thudding, with the overwhelming certainty that someone was on the other side. I began sleeping with the light on. At first, just the desk lamp. Then, after I found the chair slightly pulled out one morning, just a few inches from where I'd left it, I plugged in a motion sensor light. It never went off. But every morning I woke to something small being wrong. The remote for the fan sitting on the floor instead of my nightstand. A single sock placed neatly by the foot of my bed. Once, I found a sticky note stuck to the back of my laptop screen that simply read, "You sleep deeply." I stared at it for 10 minutes, trying to remember if I had written it. Maybe I had? Maybe it was a joke? But I didn't think it was funny. And I definitely didn't recognize the handwriting. The walls were thin. I could hear conversations from the hallway, the rumble of someone's music 2 floors up, even the scraping of a desk chair from the next room. But somehow, I never heard anyone coming in. Not Jenna. Not anyone. The silence was complete except for the things that didn't belong in it. I started checking the closet every night. Sometimes twice. Pulling everything out, scanning the walls, even crouching to look at the floorboards beneath my shoes. Nothing. And yet, every time I closed that door, I felt like I was locking something in, not keeping something out. Then one night, I came back late from a group study session. Jenna's side of the room was dark, untouched. She'd left a note on her desk saying she'd be gone for the weekend. That meant I was alone. I crawled into bed, pulled the blankets up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt almost okay. Until I rolled over at 3:17 a.m. and saw the closet door open again. Not just cracked. Wide. Like something had stepped out. And wasn't there anymore. I didn't move for what felt like a full hour. Just lay there, frozen, with my back pressed so hard against the mattress I thought my bones might leave an imprint. The closet door was wide open, not cracked, not ajar, but gaping as though someone had stepped out, or worse, was still standing there, just outside the edge of what I could see. The room was bathed in a low, amber light from the desk lamp I'd left on. My eyes were dry from staring so long, and every creak from the floor above sounded like a footstep inside my room. But I never heard the door open. I never heard anything. I finally sat up, slow and quiet, as if moving too fast might draw attention I couldn't afford. The closet was just 5 steps from my bed, but it felt like crossing a stage in front of an audience I couldn't see. I picked up my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut across the room, shaky in my hand, and landed in the black mouth of the closet. Empty. Or so it seemed. I approached like I was handling a wild animal, slow, measured steps. I crouched down and peered inside, scanning the corners, the top shelf, the space behind my coats. I even felt along the back wall, knocking once, softly. Solid. Cold. Still. I shut the door gently this time. Almost respectfully. After that night, I stopped using the closet. I moved my clothes to the dresser and started keeping the door taped shut with masking tape. 2 long strips, X-shaped. The same way they board windows during a storm. It made me feel safer, but not safe. Jenna still hadn't come back. She was supposed to return Sunday night, but Monday rolled around and her bed remained neatly made, untouched. I texted her twice, then tried calling. No answer. I figured maybe she'd decided to stay longer with her boyfriend. It wasn't uncommon, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, the masking tape was peeled off the closet door. Carefully. No tears, no damage. Just removed and left in a perfect X on the floor beside the door, as if someone had placed it there to make a point. I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed, fully dressed, knees to my chest, staring at the closet for hours. I didn't blink. I didn't eat. My thoughts were spiraling, rational at first. Maybe Jenna came back and didn't want to wake me, then paranoid. What if someone has a key to our room? Then something darker. I started thinking about the nights I thought I was alone. The times I talked to myself out loud. Changed clothes. Slept. I thought of every moment I'd been vulnerable in this room and what it would mean if someone had been watching me the entire time. I began searching for hiding spots. Not just under the bed or in the closet, but behind the walls. I knocked along every surface, listening for hollow spaces. I even climbed onto Jenna's desk and pushed open the ceiling tile above our room, nothing but darkness and wires, the air up there stale and untouched. Or, so I told myself. The next morning, I skipped class. I just couldn't face the world on no sleep and with my mind spiraling into theories that sounded increasingly insane, even to me. Instead, I stayed in the room and tried to act normal, reading, scrolling my phone, answering emails. But the whole time I was waiting for something. Around 3 p.m., I heard the distinct sound of movement. Not from the hallway. Inside the room. It came from the corner by the radiator, a soft, careful shuffle like the sound of denim brushing against drywall. I stood up slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. There was nothing there. Nothing I could see, anyway. But the smell was back. That dry skin-like scent. Like someone had been sweating into the same fabric for days. I grabbed my phone and texted Jenna again, this time with less patience. Me, are you coming back tonight? Seriously, I need to talk to you. Still no answer. I couldn't sit there any longer. I left the dorm and walked the city for hours, from the campus bookstore to the same coffee shop 3 times. Just walking. Just not being there. I returned around 9 p.m., reluctant, clutching my key in my hand like a weapon. The hallway was quiet. I unlocked the door slowly, half expecting it to already be open. But it wasn't. Everything looked just as I left it. Except for one thing. My chair had been moved. Not by much. Just a few inches back from my desk. Angled ever so slightly toward the bed. But I knew I hadn't left it like that. I knew. And then I saw the sheet of paper resting on my pillow. White printer paper. Perfectly centered. With just one sentence in tiny, blocky handwriting. I like your red sweater. I didn't own a red sweater. But Jenna did. I hadn't seen her wear it since the week before she disappeared. And just like that, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit until that moment. Jenna never said she was leaving for the weekend. I'd only seen the note. And I never checked if it was in her handwriting. I didn't sleep. Again. I spent the entire night sitting in the stairwell just outside my dorm room, knees drawn up to my chest, the hallway lights flickering above me like they were hesitating between on and off, like even the electricity was holding its breath. I didn't go back inside, not after that note. I stared at it for nearly an hour before I picked it up. The paper felt damp, like it had been held too long by warm hands. The writing was small, the kind of small you only see when someone's trying not to be heard by the paper. And even though I tried to convince myself otherwise, I knew deep down that wasn't Jenna's handwriting. Jenna curled her letters, added little loops to her G's and hearts over her eyes. This was straight, almost mechanical, each letter like it was pressed from a typewriter made of human bone. I still had her number in my phone. I called it, my thumb trembling as I held the device to my ear. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then, voicemail. Her voice sounded cheerful, tired. "Hey, it's Jenna. You know what to do." Beep. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? "Hey, I think someone's living in our room and leaving me notes about your clothes. Call me back?" Instead, I sat in that stairwell, watching the shadows at the bottom of the stairs, listening for movement behind the walls. I started thinking about that note, the words. "I like your red sweater." Not "I like it now." Not "you look good in it." Past tense. Liked. Had someone seen her in it before she disappeared? Had they taken it? Had they done something else? The question made my skin crawl in a way that had nothing to do with cold. By morning, I made a decision. I was going to campus security. I told them Jenna hadn't returned in days. I showed them the note, not telling them why it scared me, just that it was left on my pillow and I didn't recognize the handwriting. I asked if they could check if her student ID had been used anywhere. A dining hall swipe. Library entry. Anything. The woman behind the desk, Officer Lang, was kind. Tired looking. Maybe late 40s. She promised to follow up and asked if I wanted to file a missing persons report. I hesitated, part of me still thinking she'd walk in any second, full of apologies and explanations, but I said yes. They sent someone to the dorm to do a wellness check. Officer Lang and a younger guy with buzzed hair and a clipboard. I went with them, unlocking the door with shaky hands. The moment we stepped in, I knew something had changed. The air was thick, like the room had been holding its breath the whole time I was gone. I watched as Lang walked straight toward the closet. The tape I'd used to seal it shut was gone again. She opened it without hesitation. Empty. She looked back at me. "This where you found the note?" "No. It was on the bed." She nodded, made a note on her clipboard. "Any signs of forced entry?" "No. Nothing's broken. But things were missing. Small things. A spoon from the drawer. A pair of socks. One of my shampoo bottles. I hadn't even noticed until now, but they were gone." Lang didn't say much more. She took the note and told me they'd be in touch. That I shouldn't worry. That Jenna would probably turn up soon. But I could tell from the way she glanced around the room, scanning the floor, the bed frame, the vents, that she didn't believe it. That night, I booked a motel across town. Just for a night, I told myself. Just to get some sleep. I laid on the bed, fully clothed, lights on, TV off. I checked my email. Campus security had followed up. No dining swipes. No library visits. No digital trail at all. Jenna had disappeared. And the next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. "Unknown, you don't look good in red." That's when I realized something else was missing. My hoodie. My red hoodie, the one I never wore, the one that lived at the back of the closet because it was too tight, too bright, too much, it was gone. Not misplaced. Taken. And the message wasn't about Jenna. It was about me. I checked out of the motel by noon, telling myself I'd just go back, pack a few essentials, and stay with a friend until Jenna came back. Until this all blew over. Until something made sense. But the truth was I didn't have a plan. I just couldn't afford more nights away, and I didn't want to explain why I was running from my own room. I stood outside the dorm door for a long time, key in hand, forehead against the cold painted metal, listening. Nothing. I opened it slowly. The lights were off, but sunlight filtered in through the blinds in thin, dusty strips, illuminating every floating particle in the air. I held my breath. Not because of fear. Because of smell. It wasn't strong, just like before, but it had changed. No longer just stale sweat or damp clothes. This time it was breath. That sickly, acidic tinge of someone who hadn't brushed their teeth in weeks. The air itself tasted like it had been inside someone else's lungs. I dropped my bag just inside the door and walked to the closet. Open. Empty. but not the kind of empty I'd seen before. The bottom shelf had been cleared. The coats had been shoved roughly to one side like someone had made space there. Space to sit, to lie down. There was even a faint oval depression in the thin carpet, the shape of where a body might rest. And above it, on the inside wall of the closet, in what looked like charcoal or maybe ash, was a drawing. A crude sketch of a face. 2 eyes. No mouth. And beneath it, a single word smeared in shaky handwriting. Look. I stumbled backwards so fast I knocked over Jenna's laundry bin, which sent a sock skidding across the floor like a little messenger. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hands shaking, the buzzing rising in my ears again like a swarm of bees crawling down into my spine. Then I noticed the vent above Jenna's desk. It was slightly ajar. Not much. Maybe an inch. But enough. Enough to let air through. Or sound. Or maybe even eyes. I climbed on her chair and looked up into it. Cold air whispered out in soft pulses. I lifted the vent cover slowly, barely letting it creak. Inside was a narrow duct, coated in dust and grime, with just enough space for someone to drag themselves forward on their stomach. I couldn't see far, but I could hear something. Not movement, not breathing, but a hum. A low, constant vibration. It took me a second to place it. It was the sound of my electric toothbrush, the one I hadn't used in over a week. The one that had gone missing from the bathroom 3 days ago. Someone had turned it on. Not to use it. Not to clean. Just turned it on. Left it humming in the dark. I called security again. This time I begged. I told them something was wrong. Someone was in the walls. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. Officer Lang came back alone. She checked the duct. Shined her flashlight up into it. Nothing, she said, straightening. But I heard. I started. She held up a hand. I believe you. But these buildings are old. Sounds bounce around. You hear one thing, it's coming from somewhere else entirely. There's probably a fan in the system rattling somewhere. She didn't mean it. I could see it in her eyes. She was scared too. As she was leaving, she hesitated in the doorway. You said your roommate never came back? I nodded. She didn't file any leave with housing. Is that bad? She paused. I just think it's strange, is all. And then she was gone. That night, I didn't sleep in the dorm. I packed a bag and went to stay at Rachel's, a girl from my psych class. I hadn't even told her much, just that I was having issues with my roommate, needed a place for a day or two. I tried to relax. Watched something stupid on TV. Ate a real dinner. Showered. But when I laid down to sleep, I couldn't stop thinking about the vent. The sketch in the closet. The toothbrush humming in the dark. And when I woke up the next morning and checked my phone, I had a new message. From an unknown number. No text this time. Just a photo. It was a picture of me. Sleeping. In Rachel's apartment. The angle was from the window. From outside. I stared at the photo on my phone for a long time, unsure if I was more terrified by what it showed or when it had been taken. It was me, asleep in Rachel's spare room, curled on my side facing the wall, just as I had been maybe an hour ago. My phone was on the nightstand. The blanket was pulled halfway off. It was definitely last night. But the angle was wrong. It wasn't taken from inside the room. It wasn't even through the door. It was from outside. The second-floor window. Rachel's apartment was above a coffee shop, the kind of building with old brickwork and those long, narrow windows that are too high off the ground for anyone to casually peer through. There was nothing directly across from it, just the alleyway between buildings and the rusted skeleton of a fire escape that ran up the side wall. I ran to the window and looked out, heart pounding. The fire escape was still. Empty. But there were faint smears on the outside glass. Grease from fingertips. A palm print, maybe. I pressed my own hand to it. Much smaller. Whoever took that photo had been standing there, just a few inches of glass between us. Watching. I showed Rachel. I told her everything, not just the photo, but the closet, the note, Jenna, all of it. She listened. She was quiet for a long time, then did the one thing I needed more than anything. She believed me. We called the police. They came. Took statements. Checked the alley. Said they'd notify building security. But I could already tell from their tone. They'd heard it all before. Probably chalked it up to a prank. Creepy ex. A stalker with bad boundaries. No one said the word trespasser. No one said intruder. And definitely no one said living in your walls. I stayed at Rachel's another night. triple locked the windows, slept with a knife under the pillow. I didn't get a photo that time, but I didn't sleep either. Every creak of the building felt like breath on the back of my neck. By the next afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go back. Not to stay, just to see. To prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it all. That it hadn't followed me here. That maybe, just maybe, I could find something real. When I opened the dorm room door, I immediately knew I'd made a mistake. There was something wrong with the air. Not just the smell this time, though that was still there, sharper than ever, like mold and old breath soaked into drywall, but the feeling of the air. Like it was heavier, saturated with someone else's presence. Like the room had been used. The chair was pulled out. Both beds were slightly rumpled. And on the desk, a glass of water. Fresh, no dust, still cold. My stomach turned. I walked slowly toward it, then stopped. There was something on the wall above Jenna's bed. First, I thought it was mold, a smudge, but as I got closer, I realized it was drawn. Faint lines etched with something sharp. A fingernail, maybe. It was a floor plan. Our room, meticulously carved into the paint. 2 beds, 2 desks, the closet, the bathroom, and behind it, a square I didn't recognize. An extra space, a void between rooms, a hollow. I stood there for what felt like hours. Then I dropped to the floor and pressed my ear to the wall behind the closet. First, nothing. Then, soft movement, a shuffling. No rhythm, no footsteps. Just the sound of fabric dragging across a hard surface. Followed by breathing. Not loud, but deep, deliberate, and very, very close. I bolted upright and ran. Straight to campus security. I demanded they bring someone. Tools, flashlights, anything. Officer Lang came again. This time, I didn't have to convince her. She brought a maintenance guy. Big, quiet, probably in his 60s. He tapped along the walls behind the closet. Measured the depth. Checked the vents. Then he frowned. "This wall's too thick," he said. "What do you mean?" "I've worked in this building 30 years. That's an empty cavity behind there. At least 2 feet deep. But it's not connected to the next dorm. There's no plumbing, no vent lines. Nothing should be there. Can you open it?" He looked at Lang. She gave a tight nod. Took about 5 minutes. The man used a small crowbar to wedge the molding loose, then carved out a square section of drywall just above the baseboard. Fell away with a puff of dust. And behind it, blackness. Then, movement. Someone shifted inside the darkness. Lang drew her flashlight and aimed it through the hole. And we all saw it. Pair of bare feet. Facing us. Unmoving. Just standing there. Lang didn't say a word. She just stepped back and radioed for backup. The man, whoever he was, didn't run. Didn't speak. He just stood there, as still as a coat hanging in a closet. Watching. The rest is a blur. The officers came. He didn't resist. Didn't speak. He just smiled. Quiet, thin smile. Like he knew something we didn't. They found a sleeping bag. Food wrappers. Pile of clothes, some of them Jenna's. Some of them mine. A notepad filled with careful observations. Schedules. Sketches of our faces from different angles. Jenna's name appeared repeatedly, but no one could tell us where she'd gone. And he never answered a single question. They took him away in handcuffs. He never looked at me. Not directly, but just before they let him out, he turned his head slightly, just enough to glance in the direction of the closet. Not at me, not at Officer Lang, not at the cops escorting him out, just the closet. Like it was still his. Like it belonged to him. That was 2 weeks ago. Campus housing offered to relocate me. They even offered counseling, a temporary academic leave. Everything you'd expect when a situation crosses that invisible line from unsettling to something they're afraid will make the news. But I didn't take the offer, not at first. I needed to know. What happened to Jenna? I asked every day. Security, admin, even the detectives. And every time the answer was the same. "We're working on it." But that didn't mean she was found. Her things were still in the room. Her student account untouched. Socials inactive. I even reached out to her parents. Not something I ever thought I'd do. Her mom cried, thanked me, said they hadn't heard from her either. But there was something in her voice, something hollow, like she already knew, like she'd known for a while. I moved out a week later. The room had been cleaned professionally, the closet repainted, the hole in the drywall patched and plastered over. The smell was gone. The air was neutral again, but the silence, that remained. I packed slowly, taking time with every object, checking every drawer, every shelf, even under the mattress, not because I thought he was still there, but because I wasn't sure he wasn't. The final thing I packed was Jenna's red sweater. I'd found it stuffed in the back of the dresser, wedged between the frame and the drawer like someone had tried to hide it. It was inside out. There was a rip along the hem, and something about it made me feel sick when I touched it, like I was handling something intimate that no longer belonged to this world. I folded it carefully. I didn't want to leave anything of hers behind. Not after what we found. Because there was one last thing. The police had missed it. So had maintenance. It was Rachel who noticed. 3 days after I moved out, she called me, her voice tight, quiet. She said she'd been thinking about the drawing on the wall, the one behind the closet. The crude floor plan. The extra space. And she asked a question no one else had thought to ask. If the man had been hiding in the wall the whole time, how did he get in there in the first place? I felt my stomach drop. That afternoon, we went back. The building was mostly empty, spring break. We waited until no one was around, then slipped inside. I had the old key. They never changed the lock. The air was cold. Still, we moved quickly straight to the closet. Nothing seemed off. Until Rachel pointed to the top shelf, a cheap particle board panel set deep into the back wall, almost invisible if you didn't know to look. She reached up and knocked. Hollow. I pulled it down. Behind it was a narrow vertical shaft, not wide, maybe 2 feet across. An old laundry chute sealed up decades ago, never removed. And in the darkness, wedged between the walls, was a small wooden platform. And on that platform, a phone. Jenna's phone. The battery was long dead, but her case was still on it. Stickers, little pen marks on the side. Definitely hers. Rachel's hand went to her mouth. They never found her phone, right? I nodded, suddenly dizzy. We took it to the police. They said they'd send it to forensics. They didn't say anything else. I haven't heard from them since. I sleep with the lights on now. Always. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, certain I heard the sound of paper sliding under the door. Or a breath that isn't mine. And every time I walk past a closet, any closet, I check. I can't help it. It's not paranoia. It's memory. Because someone lived in mine for weeks, maybe longer, without me knowing. And the scariest part? It wasn't the man in the walls. It's how long I went before realizing I wasn't alone. How long you watched me, without ever making a sound. I haven't gone back to campus since. I transferred my credits to an online program, moved back in with my parents. Said I just needed a break. That city life wasn't for me. They didn't ask too many questions, maybe because I looked thinner, or maybe because I never really stopped looking over my shoulder, even at home. But the truth is, it followed me. Not him. Not literally. But something about what happened, it got inside. Like a splinter too deep to dig out. Some nights, I'll wake up from a dream where I'm standing in that dorm room again, looking into the closet, only now it doesn't end, it stretches back forever, deeper than a building should allow. I can hear someone breathing way down in the dark, but I can't move, can't speak. Sometimes I swear I can smell that faint, stale air again, like something that's been exhaled too many times in the same space. Sometimes I dream of Jenna. I don't know if she's alive. The police never told me. They returned her phone eventually after it had been processed. It was wiped. Nothing usable, they said. No calls. No texts. Nothing in the cloud. A total dead zone. But I couldn't help myself. I turned it on anyway just to see the lock screen, to feel something real from her. And that's when I noticed something strange. The wallpaper wasn't the same one she'd had before. I remembered hers, it was a photo of her and her cat back home. Soft, warm colors. She showed it to me once. But now? Now it was black. Just black. Except for one word written in white text at the bottom, like it had been edited into the image. Still. That's all. Still. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe he changed it. Maybe it was part of whatever game he was playing. But the more I looked at it, the more I began to feel like it wasn't for me. It was for her. A message to Jenna. Or from her. Still here. Still watching. Still trapped. Still waiting. Sometimes I wonder if maybe she found the hiding place first. If maybe she tried to confront him or talk to him or escape. Or maybe she never left. The dorm was never declared a crime scene. No body. No blood. No sign of a struggle. Just missing. But deep down, I think I know. I think she found something she was never supposed to see. Something that decided she belonged to the silence now. To the space between drywall and memory. And now I see it in other places. Everywhere I go, hotels, guest rooms, friends' apartments, I check closets, crawl spaces, air vents. I press my ear to the wall and listen. I don't even know what I'm listening for anymore. Not breathing, not footsteps, just presence. Because that's the thing no one ever tells you. When someone lives in your space without your permission, eats your food, watches you sleep, wears your clothes, learns your routines, they don't have to hurt you to destroy something. They just have to exist. And once you've lived with that kind of violation, once you've felt that invisible weight in the room with you, you never feel alone again, even when you are, especially when you are. So now I keep every door locked, every light on, and every night before bed, I open the closet myself. Not to check if something's in there, but to make sure nothing closes it while I'm asleep. Because silence is a language, and I've learned to listen.